Another exercise I like to do with kids who struggle with tics or repetitive movements is an exercise where you tell them, if I say a letter, I want you to raise your left hand, and if I say a number, I want you to raise your right hand. So you might say C, and then they have to raise this hand, and then you might say 9, and then they have to raise this hand, and then you say 7, and they have to raise this hand, and you say W, and then they have to raise this hand. And the reason I like this exercise is because it engages that basal ganglia indirect pathway, which we talked about in part 1. So if you didn't see that Tics video, go back there. But basically, this exercise forces your basal ganglia red light to stop, process what the direction was, and then give the right response. So there are a couple of ways that we can strengthen the basal ganglia indirect pathway and start helping with these motor tics. And the first way is by strengthening the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is ultimately what's going to tell the basal ganglia how to do its job. So if the frontal lobe is tired or underdeveloped or not as strong as it needs to be, it's not going to be able to tell the basal ganglia what to do. So what we do is a series of exercises that target, they're kind of brain exercises that target the frontal lobe, as well as specific chiropractic adjustments which give a huge stimulus called proprioception that reaches both the cerebellum as well as the frontal lobes. But another reason that your tics might get worse is if your child just experienced a recent infection or an illness, like if they just got a common cold and their tics start to get worse and worse and worse. So what's happening in this instance is the cold that you just experienced, your body will start to make antibodies to further protect your body. If it sees that cold again, it'll know what to do. It'll know how to protect itself. But the problem is sometimes these antibodies can see the basal ganglia and think that is the illness, which is called a cross reaction. So it thinks that the basal ganglia is the illness, so it starts attacking the basal ganglia. It starts cross reacting, which is not good. This makes the basal ganglia start to malfunction. The red light doesn't work as well, which means your tics are going to start showing through. So if this is what's happening, we want to focus on healing and sealing your barriers. So specifically your blood-brain barrier, as well as any intestinal permeability like a leaky gut. Once these barriers are healed and sealed, the antibodies can no longer cross those barriers and start affecting the basal ganglia. So depending on why the tics start happening, most of the times when we help kids with tics, it's because we're either developing and strengthening the frontal lobes, or we're healing and sealing, leaky barriers so that the antibodies can't cross-react with that basal ganglia. But when you're trying to help your child with tics, I really encourage you to find someone that gets to the root cause of why they're happening and they don't just mask the symptoms. If you want more resources on tics, we have a free tics ebook with a link in our bio or maybe in this video, and we'll also talk to you more about neurologically based care and how they help with tics.